Thank you for joining us online. Really, this fall, the Friends of Wisconsin State Parks distributed an online poll asking our members to choose topics for the early winter presentation for 2021. One of the topics selected was recruiting members and volunteers, something most of our friends groups deal with. Today we have Sheldon Bennemann, who will offer a few suggestions on how to attract new volunteers and then, the important part, retain them. Sheldon is the Community Engagement Manager for the Volunteer Center of Washington County in West Bend, Wisconsin. She left her career in education to join the Volunteer Center team to work in community engagement. On behalf of the Friends of Wisconsin State Parks, let's give a warm welcome to Sheldon as she shares her insights on volunteer engagement.
Hello, thank you for the warm welcome. I appreciate it. Yes, just like you heard, I'm here to share and present different information about how to recruit volunteers and how to retain them. I do understand that everyone's volunteering programs are all very different and in different stages, and things like that. This might not, you might not take everything away from the presentation, but I do hope that your bag of tips and tricks grows. Maybe you have some clarification on next steps, or I just really hope you can take away at least one new hobby or communication or skill away from this to help grow your own volunteering pool. So let's hop right into it. Like you said, I am Sheldon. I work with the Volunteer Center of Washington County in West Bend. Um, the Volunteer Center of Washington County was created in 1983. Our mission is to mobilize volunteers and resources to help improve the quality of life of Washington County. So, our vision to drive this, we've got lots of different programs, opportunities that we'll dive into deeper. Please note my contact information is down at the bottom of the screen. You can always contact us at volunteernow.net. Myself or anyone on our team would love to be able to help you chat more, support you in whatever you may need or questions you have. All right. So, I want to start with the current state of volunteering. We have seen changes prior to COVID. We've seen changes during COVID. And so I just wanted to address where things are right now. Obviously, the pandemic has had a lot of impact, but it really has a lot of impact on new volunteers. Nearly half of all millennials now currently believe in civic engagement where they didn't before. And two-thirds of millennials are now more likely to volunteer than prior to COVID 19. So we do have a new pool or audience of potential new volunteers. We'll just have to switch the way we think a little bit or the way we communicate to make sure that we're grasping that volunteer pool. Most likely, new volunteers are actually urban white males between 35 and 40 years old. Now, West Bend is slightly urban, but it's not a large city like Milwaukee or Chicago. So that means we have to get creative. Some more information about the current state of volunteering. Volunteers are still anxious about volunteering. The fear of exposure has increased between March and October of 2021. However, the interest in volunteering has increased significantly. So, volunteers or potential new volunteers want to get out, they want to do something, they want to make social change. There's just some fear and anxiety around it. And those are the key issues that we need to be addressing right now. So, how do we address them? Currently, 95% of current volunteers want to continue to support their community, which means if you have a pool of volunteers, we need to continue to target them, continue to thank them, show appreciation, and potentially challenge them or find a meaningful role for them. We also need to address and listen to safety concerns and health concerns for current and potential new volunteers. Lastly, virtual volunteering has increased as well. 1 in 4 volunteers want to volunteer virtually, which means we should be offering about 1 in 4 virtual volunteering opportunities. These things could include um, someone who takes care of your social media, someone who's an influencer, someone who maybe works on newsletters or the website or graphics. This is where we need to start thinking creatively. Now, the best news is that volunteers are still very much looking to get involved, and this is the perfect time to start recruiting. So, when it's time to start recruiting, the number one piece of advice that I have is to invite people in. One of the prime reasons why millennials lack social issue action is that they feel uncomfortable engaging with the people that they don't know. Hence, where that virtual volunteering comes in. So, what we need to be doing is we need to be building a relationship with our audience. We're not thinking of people as just potential volunteers and current volunteers, but building relationships outside of your organization. You never know if someone's going to become a donor, a volunteer, someone who comes to a program, or an event. When you build a relationship first and continue to foster and build that relationship, you can eventually build a reliable, regular volunteer. So, some different ideas to invite people into your organization might be things like inviting local nonprofits or businesses or partners into your space, maybe touring your space. Do you have a monthly coffee hour or percolette? Maybe you have a monthly volunteer open house where your volunteers can come in for 2 hours. They can get snacks, they can get treats, and it's just your way of showing appreciation. Maybe you consider creating like field trip ideas and sending them to schools. You want to start thinking how you can invite people into your organization so they can get to know you, your team, and the space and feel comfortable within that space. Once community members begin to feel more comfortable in your space, it's going to be a lot easier for them to sign up to volunteer and volunteer regularly. You also need to get to know your local groups. This is huge. Think about employers that offer volunteer days, local Rotary clubs, United Ways, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, athletic groups, church groups. I highly suggest trying to meet with 1 to 2 groups per month. Um, Stopping in at schools, again, local businesses. Do you have a very booming downtown strip or a location where a lot of people tend to congregate? Start meeting there and spreading word. Start asking people what their interested needs are. When you're meeting with these groups, ask them what they see in your community and what kind of help or change they would like to see, and align that with yourself, or explain to them how their own passions align with yours. This is a great opportunity for storytelling, continuing to say what you're doing, um, telling the story about how you're impacting the community. How are you driving change? And most specifically, tell that new volunteer or potential new volunteer how their strengths can help further your mission. Explain to them how they can make a tangible and quick impact. And I highly, highly suggest finding some way to organize that information and that contact information. At the Volunteer Center of Washington County, we use MailChimp quite often. If not every day, very close. Now, we're not emailing the same group of people every day. MailChimp has a thing called tags. That's what these little images are here for. So you could send an email on Monday to maybe all your youth volunteers. And on Tuesday, you might make a call to action and send out an email to local groups because you are needing a big work day. You can change what you send and how you send it, but I very much highly suggest finding a way to organize that contact information so that way you can communicate with those groups that you are meeting and they can become your feet on the ground. All right. So that's the current state of volunteering. With that current state, we need to start re envisioning what volunteering looks like. We need to begin meeting our volunteers where they are. Some want to volunteer one time, some want to volunteer multiple times, some want to stay at home, some want to go out. We've got lots of different audiences that are currently driven to volunteer. It is now our responsibility to change our mindset and meet those volunteers wherever they are. So instead of sharing your latest need, like we need we're going to do a garlic pull. We have an invasive species of mustard garlic or garlic mustard, and we just need people to come pull leaves and weeds. That's not going to be as engaging. But instead, if you come back and say, we're going to make a competition and we're going to pull this invasive mustard garlic, and we're going to see which group can pull the most in 2 hours, making things more fun and engaging, rewarding, competitive to volunteers starts to meet them where they are. When we think about volunteering and re-envision what volunteering's like, we also need to realize that volunteering now isn't just being somewhere with your body, giving your time. It can also be donating goods. It can be leaving a donation. It can be sharing a social media post or posting something on your behalf. When it comes to figuring out how you want to recruit volunteers, you need to evaluate your current volunteering program. Where are you and where do you want to go? Start with where you are and then grow from there. Baby steps. That's all where it starts. So, right now, if your volunteering is all in person, I would suggest trying to accommodate other types of volunteers and seeing what other type of volunteering you guys can offer outside of in person. If you already feel like you're offering multiple different volunteering opportunities, then hang on. We're going to get into that again a little bit later, thinking about how we can creatively offer multiple different volunteering opportunities. Again, the big thing is you want to meet your volunteer needs first. Volunteers want to be asked what they need to be able to volunteer. What do they need to be successful? How can I help support you because you're giving us your time? They also want to be asked how you can work alongside each other to have the biggest impact. They want to know if they come to you and say, I am a trained baker and I love baking, then you work together and say, if you're a trained baker and that is one of your strengths, how can we support that and maybe find something programmatically or whatever it may be so that way you guys can have the biggest impact together. Now, if we know what the current state looks like, we're starting to re envision volunteering. Let's talk about once you get volunteers into the door or to their first volunteering spot, how can we get them hooked on you? The first is targeted communication. Communication and emails, very, very, very important. When you are communicating, you need to first list off your volunteering benefits. Explain to someone who's walking through your door what makes your organization awesome. Why is it appealing? Why is your organization strong within the community? And what tangible impact can they make? When I first started volunteering, I started at the hub in West Bend, and it is owned by the Volunteer Center. And these questions got answered very quickly before I even signed up to volunteer. When I got inside, I enjoyed the feeling, the atmosphere, the community that they had. I could tell that they were strong within the community because as soon as I was volunteering, I was learning that the Volunteer Center was helping more than 55 other local nonprofit communities. So that was one of our strengths. And the tangible impacts, I knew when I volunteered that our tips that we would receive as volunteers were all going back in donation to other local nonprofits. So I felt good about it. I could tell that this was a strong program. And at the end of every shift, I knew I was making some type of tangible impact. Now, with targeted communication, you also need to understand your audiences. How you speak and write and communicate to your audiences may be different. How your audiences or how your audiences volunteer or what they volunteer to do could also be different. So sometimes we need to tailor that kind of communication. So if you're trying to reach students, Think about reaching out to school faculty, learn about any type of service learning requirements, hours required for graduation. See if you can get any type of mailing list. Are there student clubs? Things like that. If you're trying to reach out into the corporate world and get more business partners or business volunteers, reach out to engagement managers or HR managers. Ask if there's a volunteer initiative. Ask if you can do some type of partnership. Ask them how employees learn about things. Could you do a 1 week promo for 5 days explaining 5 different volunteering needs? If you created everything and sent it out to the HR manager, could they forward it to their staff? Again, you should have a virtual presence and encourage virtual volunteering. So, promoting current virtual opportunities on your site, on social media, making brand new virtual opportunities, checking in with your groups. Maybe that's something you do on social media. Again, having newsletters and just getting the word out to your volunteers and about your volunteers. If you're trying to reach more families, think about where families spend time together: public arenas, parks, churches, community centers, gyms, and think about posting signage up there, or again, trying to reach out to those um, different community members. Could you go to your local YMCA and do they have a nonprofit fair or a job fair that you could be at recruiting volunteers? Could you set up a table for a day or a week, trying to widen your audience? And finally, seniors. Thinking about, very similarly with families, where do seniors spend most of their time? Think about community centers. Where do they congregate? Assisted living centers. Are there cork boards you can put signs up? These are all really large um, kind of groups that we focus on when we are trying to recruit new volunteers. Something else we provide while we're trying to recruit is communication about our story and how they can volunteer. So we normally have this handout in when we have a volunteering opportunity, if we have a group coming with us, if we're going to go do a field trip or a presentation, we hand these sheets out. On one side, it just very quickly explains who we are. It explains where we are currently with volunteering. We're explaining how Volunteering Center supports local nonprofits, what our vision is, and how we're getting there. On the other side, it shows how to volunteer. Lots of people come to us in many different forms, so it's important that we stay consistent and transparent with these different avenues, but that we also let our audiences choose which avenue they want to come to us. So we suggest to visit our website, a phone call. We have an email address. Now, these email addresses I suggest making very generic, like contact at, so that way if there's staff turnover, no one's learning a new name, anything like that. Or also having a volunteer walk in. Again, if we make that community, if we make our community an environment very welcoming within our offices or our space, and we're inviting the public in, then you'll continue to get more and more foot traffic through the door. And I can tell you, nothing is more lasting or impressionable than when a volunteer walks through your door, someone in your staff stops what they're doing, sits down to talk to them, to learn their passions, to learn why they want to volunteer, and helps make that match. I guarantee you will have at least a very good volunteer for one opportunity, if not more, when there's that face to face connection being made. When we're talking about targeted communication, we also need to know who our audience is. So, our audience is those who feel personally affected by our mission and they want to do good. They're choosing to spend their time with you instead of spending their time on the couch. So, when we are calling out to volunteers, when we have language that says urgent, looking for volunteers, volunteers needed, we need you. If you have rigid hours, I need you 1 day a week, every single Monday from 1 to 5. That kind of is more of an old school model of volunteering now. We know that volunteers of all ages are less likely to respond to opportunities and needs that have that obligatory language. If they feel like you're in a pinch and a rush, they don't want to expose themselves to that anxiousness. If they feel words like needed and urgent can show that it's more of an obligation and not so much fun and social. So we don't want to use words like that. Instead, our volunteers are looking for flexibility. They're looking for fun where they can be social with others or their friends. And again, most importantly, they want to know exactly what impact they're making by giving them their time. They're not looking for shifts that are more than 3 hours. They're looking to be able to sign up when they can with a schedule that works for them. And oftentimes, I suggest starting and getting a volunteer hooked for just 1 or 2 shifts and having it go from there. Volunteers aren't looking to make a 1 year commitment or a 6 month commitment, right? Especially right now, we don't know what 6 months is going to look like or a year from now is going to look like. And people just don't feel as confident making those promises in an area of unknown. All right. So now we are going to continue to think about volunteering and how do we make volunteering fun and engaging? We need to start thinking about what people leave their house for and why people would leave their house to come volunteer for you. So we might start asking ourselves, where do we currently use our volunteers? Is this what we want to use them for? Or do we want our volunteers to be able to do XYZ? How can we make volunteering more enticing? How can we make people want again to donate their time? These were all questions we started to ask ourselves at the Volunteer Center of Washington County. And our answers were two. We had two different answers. The first was the Do Good bus, which is this picture over on the top right hand side. So, our Do Good bus is an old school bus. It's based off of a model in California that we worked with. Um, and this model is we've got a couple of different ways to use the Do Good bus. But once a month, we have a community volunteering Do Good bus ride. We don't tell our volunteers what they're doing or where they're going. We just tell them what to expect and what to wear or bring if they would need to. We tell them to meet them at our spot or our location at a specific time. Everyone hops on the bus. We take them to the location, then we tell them what they're doing. And we leave out a lot of that information so that way we leave bias on the side. We want people to come to the table with an open mind. Some of that mystery behind it creates energy of what are they doing. There's a lot of guesses and it just makes people more hyped for the experience. Our second kind of volunteering program that we put into place is called the Hub Social Good Brews. That is our for purpose coffee shop. It is run by volunteers. Our ideal model is one paid staff for 3 volunteers. And really, it's just a community event space or community space. It's a place where people can come and hang out. They can do work or homework. They can host meetings. Um, but again, our coffee shop all comes back to really trying to do good for the better community. So we are there helping our other nonprofit members and sharing just different events that they have going on. And because it's just a unique volunteering opportunity, we've got some volunteers who come for a season and we've got some who stay for a long time. So we've got some volunteers who like to bake and some who like to pour coffee and some who just want to come in and clean and stamp. But again, we need to start thinking about how can we make volunteering more exciting. Once you've figured out what that program for your organization is going to look like, then you need to start thinking about, can volunteers sign up with ease? How can we accommodate their schedules because everyone has busy schedules? Can we have incentives and rewards along the way? Now, I'm not saying that you all need to open up a coffee shop or get an old school bus, but some other type of engaging volunteering programs might include pop-ups, workshops, having a social media influencer, having a date night, a family outing. Could you partner with another local nonprofit? Could you offer photo sessions and have a local photographer come in and take photos, and you raise donations for your organization? With some of these more programmatic things, they should be designed to be a one time kind of hook them in, right? We want to offer a plethora of different volunteering opportunities. We want to hook someone in for one time, maybe they come back a second time for that same program. And then the goal is from there, they say, I want to do more here. So don't think just volunteering once long term. Um, think about volunteering um, and trying to hook them in with one time to multiple times to becoming a reoccurring volunteer. You should also think about training. There should be little training on the job, or as people continue to volunteer with you, there should be a supportive, structured training checklist or process. And again, always encourage social media usage. It's the best tool at our fingertips. All right. So, my question to you is, how will you inspire someone to become a part of your community, to leave the couch and get into your nonprofit? Once someone has decided to come to your nonprofit and be a part of something, that's the hardest first step. But we're going to dig a little deeper. What stops people from coming into your door? Well, we know for the first thing is that social issues that volunteers are currently most interested in are COVID, climate change, women's rights, racial and social justice, mental health and social services, job creation, healthcare reform, poverty and homelessness, the environment, animal rights and care. So, as you're calling out to volunteers, I suggest linking what social change your volunteer can have if they're spending time with you. You should also have a call to action. Every poster, social media post, email, any communication that goes out there should always have a call to action. Current ways that millennials are supporting social and local issues is posting or sharing content on a social media forum. They're taking the time to learn about the cause and the social issue. They're donating goods, or they're stopping buying certain products or services. And they've even signed a petition. Now, uncertainty, unfortunately, will keep the volunteers away. So, what keeps them on their couch, not helping you? If volunteers aren't financially able to be there, if transportation is an issue, if they're uncomfortable engaging with others they don't know, if they have concerns about being vaccinated, or if they'd rather just be doing other things during their free time. So it's important that we are clear with what we're providing, why we need their help, and how you can continue to guarantee their safety and health while volunteering. Okay, we're going to dive into retention. So, if we've thought about the current state, we've changed maybe how we're calling to volunteers, how we're communicating to volunteers, how often we're communicating to volunteers. We've got them through our door. They volunteered with us for one program or event. Now we've hooked them on us. We're hoping to continue to build that relationship, have them come back and volunteer again, potentially becoming a regular, reliable volunteer. We want to retain them. We want to help make them that reliable, repeating volunteer. So let's talk about retention. The average retention rate for regular long term volunteers is 3 years, which means as we continue to develop these processes and tweak them, you're always going to continue to have a new pool of volunteers coming in. And so you may find that once you've developed a process, you tweak it every 2 to 3 years, because as your pools of volunteers are changing and volunteers are leaving, you're going to have to start that volunteer recruitment and continue volunteering recruitment as well. So, what we want to do to continue to keep our volunteers for up to 3 years or longer is we want to continue to engage with them. We want to remind them what we offer to them, why volunteering is great for the community. We want to question them, then invite them to action. and again, rewarding volunteers. And I know that this can bring up a very big discussion about if you're rewarding volunteers, is it actually volunteering? And I would challenge you to rethink about that. That tends to be an old school versus new school model. Um, some believe that rewarding volunteers isn't actually volunteering, while the other half of the population would say it's a great retention tool. It's a great way to get people in through the door. With our volunteers at the coffee shop, we have rewards that they receive every 50 hours because they're giving a lot of time and it's making a huge impact to us. So we need to be able to reward them in return. Some other volunteer retention strategies: making sure you're having a welcoming community, clear and specific COVID-19 regulations, and just consistent and clear communication. Other ideas might be having a volunteer spotlight of the week or of the month. Could you have a volunteer impact page on your website? Can you share the collective impact? How many hours? What's that value? What has that allowed you to do? So, for example, if we have a volunteer who volunteers over the weekend, we know that we can serve quiche all week long at our coffee shop. Something else we might consider would be if we have a volunteer who comes in and is cleaning for us because we love those volunteers. While the rest of us have a big to do list, we might say, because you're a regular volunteer who's coming in to clean, you're allowing us to create our volunteer newsletter or something else going out. Let your volunteers know, because they're there and giving their time, the things that you guys are able to create or the impact they're making. Again, benchmarks and rewards, competitions, and giveaways from local businesses or partners are other great ways to keep volunteers engaged. Now, let's talk about your website, because your website should be doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to volunteer retention. If you feel like you're in this stage now, that means you should have that you're ready for to design your website. You feel like, yep, we've got a great volunteer recruitment, we've got that process handled. Then your website's your next focus, and I'm not going to lie, it takes a lot of time. Um, but it's one of those things that if you create a website that works for you, you create a website that's just a well-running machine, it will do all of the retention things on the backside to continue to get your volunteers back through your door. So, your website, it should be colorful and engaging. You want anyone who's looking at your website or your volunteers to be excited to search around, and make sure you have buttons and buttons everywhere. Let them click on things. Let them go to a random page and go back. Let them, because the more they're on your site and clicking around, the more they're learning about you, the more excited they are about this opportunity. Now, even though I say your website needs to be colorful and buttons and everything everywhere, it still needs to be clear and very informative. So anyone who's coming to your site knows exactly how to volunteer, when to volunteer, who to contact, what does volunteering require, what are they signing up for, maybe even the sign up process. So examples of buttons, I placed this one down here in the bottom part of the screen. Again, this is just our do good bus, and it shows exactly how many volunteers we've engaged, the impact it's had, things like that. You want your website to be as streamlined as possible, and you also want to make sure it has up to date contact information. Nothing's worse than deciding, I'm going to take an initiative, I'm going to take the first step, I'm going to go help. A local organization. I go to their website. I say, yep, I want to do it. I'm taking the time. I'm finally ready. And then you play cat and mouse with emails, trying to figure out who's who, or that email doesn't work. So it's very important to make sure your contact information's up to date. You also want your website, again, like I said, to be as streamlined as possible. So we use things like MailChimp. Calendly allows people to schedule a meeting with you, and there's lots of different options there, so you can tailor it to what your schedule is like. And we also use Typeform quite a bit for surveys. All three of these can really be used. Again, if someone's taken the time to set up the processes, they really can be used to be streamlining a lot of communication. So again, thinking about newsletters, is there an easy way for people to sign up for newsletters on your website? Then, once you have that contact information, how can you continue to communicate with them? Automated email blasts and notifications should be your best friend. Again, this is a something that you set up. You may take it will take some time to get set up, but then once it's set up, it's going to continue to work for you behind the scenes where you've forgotten about it. You might have automated email blasts or notifications when needs and opportunities come up. If you want to share congratulations, shout outs and thank yous, has a volunteer reached a major milestone, anything to show appreciation. You also might want to consider the time of year. Is it a no school day? Is it something around family celebration time, holidays, Veterans Day? Anytime there's things like that, great time to send an email as well. And again, always make sure you have that call to action in your email. Things like signing up for a need. Maybe they sign up for it and they can click on it and it takes them to a custom page. Any type of celebrations and holidays and um, how you could be using extra volunteers during that time. Um, Giving them volunteers their choice to say what their next step is going to be. Now, your website should also have curated volunteering opportunities available. What that means is that people who are visiting can very quickly see all the different types of volunteering opportunities that you have. So, my examples very quickly are our youth volunteering, senior volunteering, and again, our December Do Good bus. Your opportunities should be specific to groups. It should be fun and engaging. And your volunteer needs, when they're communicated and talked about, they should communicate passion for those opportunities. Speak about impact. Make sure that this would be something that would catch your eye that you would want to do because your potential volunteers can read that passion in your posts. Other type of curated volunteering experiences might be something for your location, family friendly opportunities, of course, outside opportunities. Maybe it's warm opportunities or cold opportunities. Court mandated as well. That is where some of our volunteers are coming from, is that they're mandated by the court to complete certain hours. So maybe that's something that you call out to help that audience feel more comfortable when they come to your location. The last thing for volunteer retention is to make sure that you set goals and you track your data. You're looking at how many people are attending your programs, how many people are clicking on your site, how many have clicked on your site and said, yes, I'm going to responded to your need. Do you have more people visiting than signing up? If so, why? All right, guys, that was a lot of information, but I want to thank you for sticking with me this whole time. Like I said, volunteering, recruiting, and retention, it's not a one-stop shop. Everybody's in different locations, in different places, and that's a-okay. It's all about finding what works best for you and just starting to really challenge yourself and think creatively.
Sheldon, I have to take a deep breath. My goodness gracious. I sure am glad we're videoing this because I have to go back and check out places. This is just so much valuable information. It's hard to pick and choose how to make this an effective choice. I love how you initiate the planning phase, getting the word out, call to action. Speaking for ourselves, it's so difficult to say, I need volunteers, come now.
It is
That
absolutely. It's a very uncomfortable feeling to be calling or asking others to volunteer. I very much agree. And so I think when you start to think about working together or making a model that really we go hand in hand in there. It feels more collaborative and not just I'm putting this work onto you. But I agree, it can be difficult, and there's
I,
always lots of places to start or lots of things to try to.
I think over and over, the plan is the important part. Let's have a plan for offering these opportunities, because it seems like without a plan, it's just doomed to failure.
Exactly. You will always be riding the hamster wheel if there's not a plan. And you'll feel that work of riding that hamster wheel if
Mhm.
there's not a plan moving forward.
Thank you very much, Sheldon, for your insights about recruiting members and volunteers. We hope that our friends group adopts your suggestions and their friends group continues to grow. Please remember to enjoy your state park, take a trail less traveled, walk in a state forest listening to the wind, and have fun in your favorite recreation area.